And by doing a bigger piece than I actually need, I can choose which part of the ink blending I like best. So these cardstock pieces are the same size as the last one. So this part here that is going to be ink blended is going to be cut down to 3 3/4 by 5 1/4. And my insert is also that same size. All right, and now a little bit of this lilac color. You'll see I always start off of the page and then work my way in. Just because if you start on, basically make sure to not use a heavy hand. If you're too heavy-handed, you end up with basically an impression of your brush here. And where's the dark one there? There we go. This one here is Uncharted Mariner. It's one of the newer colors, and I love this color of blue. Oops. So mix it as much, or sorry, blend it as much or as little as you want. I like when there's a little bit of lighter shades in there. It kind of gives the look of like wispy clouds in the sky. And what you can do if you want it blended further is you can go back to those first two colors and add another layer of them. And it just continues to blend. There we go. Tuck those to the side. So now I am going to cut this down. So like I said, it needs to be 5 1/4 by 3 3/4. So it's just slightly too big. And I am actually going to cut a little bit off the bottom and then a little bit off the top. There we go. Just having a moment of second guessing there, and I figured I should double check my measurements. All right, this one can get glued down. And I do put some glue on the back side of that gold that we glued down there as well. I'm leaving it a little bit raised up because I'm going to take a scrap piece of white and just kind of create a hill for the front of this. I'm going to put an acrylic block on there to hold that down to dry. And then the part for the hill can just be a scrap piece of white cardstock. You don't need to cut it out of a new piece. So this is going to be 5 1/4 in length. That weighs 5 1/4, and then I just rip it. If you don't like the look of ripped cardstock, you can cut it. But when it comes to snow, personally, I just like the look of it when it's got a ripped edge. I think it looks a little bit more organic, a little bit more natural. But if that's not your cup of tea, then just use the scissors and cut it, and cut like a hill shape. And as you can tell, it's not really like a rolling hill. It's just some ground in front of those houses. And I'm going to add some stickles to them as well. Just a little bit of snow on the top of the roofs, on the trees. And I'm going to let this dry completely before we go and assemble our card. This step, if you wanted, could be done after your card was completely finished as well. You could wait till it's totally done and you could add the stickles to it. I like doing it at this point, and then I'm going to go, the next step is to add the stamping and embossing for the inside insert. kind of create some hills just with the stickles there. All right, this is going to be tucked aside to completely dry, and that will be tucked out of the way. Make sure this piece is the right size for the insert. So like I said, it needs to be 3 3/4 by 5 1/4. And the stamp that I am using is from this set here. Put it on my block, and this particular block has some grid lines to it, which helps to keep, so you can look at the grid lines to make sure that you're lined up straight. I have some gold embossing powder here and my embossing pad. Grab some scrap paper to work on, because any of the embossing powder that doesn't stick to the ink and goes back on the scrap paper can be put right back into my container there. So I want to leave a little bit of an area for my ribbon to go in, so I'm not going to stamp this right close to the edge. I'm going to stamp it about a 1/2 inch in. I don't want to go too far in though, because I want to make sure that this completely gets revealed. There we go. Put on the gold embossing powder. Now I clearly must have touched it with some damp fingers, because I see some fingerprints there. If you have that with any of your powder, make sure to wipe it off. You can use a soft brush if there's a smaller area that you need to get into. But you have to do that before you start to melt it, because if it's melted, it is stuck to the paper. You're not going to get it off. And now we're going to use an embossing tool to melt that powder. So you can see the bottom is already melted. It goes nice and smooth and shiny when it gets melted. All right, perfect. So I'm going to wait for my stickles to dry completely. And once that is done, we will start our assembly and we have all our pieces ready.